Imagine, it's the year 2016. Krashen and Van Patten are headlining IFLT. Ben Slavic is running the war room. Tea with BVP is blowing up. Comprehensible Input wasn't just methodology. It was a movement. The energy, the storytelling, the laughter, the community. The evidence that acquisition works. Those were the glory days of CI, and now it's time to bring them back. Welcome to the CI Renaissance Podcast with your hosts, Sean Lawler and Greg Schwab.
There's a little bit of like classic Spanish guitar in that intro, isn't there? Wow, that's nice.
I think so. Yeah. It took me years to get to that level of Spanish guitar. And as I said, I've been in the studio all summer, recording this track. Hey, what's up, Sean?
What's up, Greg? Good morning.
Morning. So we are the CI Renaissance. I'm Greg Schwab, and I'm here with my co-host, Sean Lawler. We are Comprehensible Input Spanish teachers in the Chicagoland area. But, this podcast is not limited to the Chicagoland area. We're going international, and we're going to let the Renaissance begin. And we're going to bring back the enthusiasm of teaching with CI.
Oh, yeah.
So last episode, we were talking about, if you didn't catch that, we were talking about the pros and cons of different CI methods. And we went through several methods, starting with TPR, Total Physical Response by Dr. James Asher, TPRS by Blaine Ray, TPRS 2.0 by Blaine Ray, Krashen's natural approach. And finally, we have arrived to our favorite CI method, which is Ben Slavic's STAR approach. We were talking.
You mentioned TPR, right? We started there and stuff. And James Asher started promoting this TPR stuff, pretty sure right around the time after Krashen was publishing.
I think he was actually before Krashen. So yeah, okay. The theory of comprehensible input hadn't really been formulated, but he was, he was already developing this TPR. I think it was in the 60s. We can look that up, but
okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yep, going way back to the beginnings and then taking the chronological path in time. And here we are, Ben Slavic's STAR approach.
Yeah, and as we had mentioned in the previous episode, I was talking to Sean about this before we were recording, is that when I was growing up, I used to watch the old Batman series on reruns with Adam West. And I think it was on WCIU, the U, Channel 26, Chicago. And, in the summer when you're a kid and you're watching the reruns on TV.
The only people who watch the U channel these days are like people that are just sitting in their sofas all day long. And they're probably 80 years old sipping on coffee, because those programs are like from the 50s and the 60s.
Yeah, like the Andy Griffith Show and Chips and all that. But
yes.
Anyway, the 1960s Batman show, they used to usually end in some kind of like climax in the story where they were like being captured by the Penguin or something like that, and they were like hanging upside down,
Sure.
and then they said, see us next time, same bat channel.
Uh-huh.
But then the next episode, they would do a little recap. So that's kind of what we're doing for you.
Yeah.
But Ben Slavic, he taught French for 40 years. He was a student of, or you could say, quote unquote, student of Susan Gross, who was one of the first pioneers of TPRS. And he wrote a book called TPRS in a Year. He wrote some subsequent books on the TPRS method, like PQA in a Wink.
Uh-huh.
And then in, I believe it was 2016, he was teaching at an embassy school in India, and he created what's known as the STAR approach. It used to be called the Invisibles, where you work, instead of working from language targets, you work from images.
Yeah.
You work from one word image, which is a collaboratively created image by the class, or the student created image, which are images that the students draw, and then you use those characters in the story. So really, the content of the class is completely student centered and student driven. So we were talking about that, and
Those are terms that admin love to hear: student centered, student driven,
student centered.
Yep.
And it is a non-targeted approach to comprehensible input.
Yeah.
And how would we explain non-targeted to somebody that has no idea what we're talking about?
Oh gosh, instead of targeting, instead of having a list of vocabulary or language structures that you are intending and preparing to teach, quote unquote, teach that day, non-targeted instruction would be more where you are letting the language come based on the context, the happenings of the organic flow of conversation that happens in class. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And this comes from Dr. Stephen Krashen, who actually came up recently with the net hypothesis. And this is basically that, if you just give students comprehensible input, everything, all the frequent structures and everything they need is right there. So there's no need to really plan for certain structures.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting. One of the most fascinating theories of Krashen is, for me, had always been the I+1.
Okay.
Okay, so the I+1 basically
That's a formula.
says that you have the input, which is the I, and then you should just be one step, like slightly above the understanding of the students, and that's optimal.
Yeah.
Right? So in 2018, I helped Krashen organize his seminar in Chicago. He was doing a story listening seminar. And I specifically asked him about the I+1 because I was kind of confused. Like, okay, if you can't really control acquisition as much as teachers think we can, and everybody develops at a different rate, how would you determine the I+1 for like 30 students? And it's interesting that what Krashen said to me, he said, look, I created the theory of I+1, and even I don't really know what it means.
Okay.
And then he said, and I think it's unfortunate that of all the stuff that all the research and stuff that I have published, that is the one thing that people latch onto, and they ignore everything else.
Oh, sure. Of course. Well, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's humble of him to like admit his maybe misgivings. But yeah, I mean, it's to have that kind of equation is memorable. So I'm not surprised that that's something that people are going to remember and bring up.
Yeah.
But the problem is then they might find ways to interpret it that aren't necessarily grounded in
right.
the theory.
And with the non-targeted, the I+1 is already there, so so how long have you been using Ben's approach? And how is it working out for you?
That's a good question. Like, when did I start using Ben's methods? Yeah. Or Ben's practices. Because the approach is really comprehensible input, right? That's the approach. I would say that maybe I want to say around 2015, I started using these practices where I think I first started using scripts, mini story scripts, and then Anamatava scripts. I dabbled into Jim Tripp's scripts. And this was all like I was playing around with how to use this method after going to an IFLT conference in, I think, 2014, meeting Ben Slavic there, as well as a number of other people, and then joining Ben Slavic's blog and just really digging deep into the gosh, into the battle. I mean,
Yeah.
into the mud of what it was for us to try to figure out how to make what we know about Krashen's theory, what we know about comprehensible input, and make it practical and make it applicable in our classrooms. And I think, you know, OWI, one word images, was also a part of that, where like Ben and others, and Ben especially, Ben was really working on creating that OWI. I'm not sure when he started OWIs, right? I know it was the Invisibles was with the Pringle Man, I think it was, right? And when he
Pringles
was
Man,
teaching
yeah.
at a school in American Embassy School or whatever, international school in New Delhi. But I'm pretty sure he had been working on using OWIs for years before that, for several years before that. But
Yeah.
just kind of polishing it over the years.
Yeah, and I think one misunderstanding that a lot of CI people have about one word image, and this is why, you know, like, yes, we want you to listen to the CI Renaissance podcast, and we'll tell you things, but you know, it is important to go to the source too, because you know, I've seen some presenters present one word image like it's just this 5-minute warm up activity and you're done. But what people don't understand is like creating a character that can take a whole class period. That could take a whole 60-minute class period.
Just the
And
character itself.
just the character. And then you have the next day when you're putting the character through a story, and then you're having the subsequent days where you're doing extension activities with the story. So like this is a whole curriculum. This is not just like, oh, this is kind of a cool activity to do, one word image, and just make like some kind of, because I've seen a teacher do that before, like, oh, we made class mascots, and then it's like, oh, well, did you go through the story process? Oh no, we just made a class mascot. But it's like, no, you could stretch that out. That could be almost a whole week of instruction, you know? Because
and it is cool and it is novel, especially at the beginning when you start using it. But it's not gonna be cool and novel throughout the whole year, and that's okay. It's still super engaging, you know.
right.
Like, well, I get students that tell me, "Oh, we're gonna do a story again, or we're doing this again," and okay, granted, maybe I could do a better job of like setting students up to begin another one that's a little more like novel or whatever, but once we get into it, like the students see, and we all know that this is quality stuff that we're doing. Students are engaged. They choose their jobs that they want to take on. They're giving ideas on how we're developing the character, what it looks like, and where the character lives and stuff. They're involved, you know. So yeah, I just caution our teachers out there with thinking that, okay, this is going to be cool and novel and great. Students are going to be super excited every single time you use it. I mean, when is that ever the case with teenagers, you know? But this stuff works.
Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing that a lot of people don't realize is you also have the STAR, the curriculum STAR. So let me pull up an image of that and we can go through that. So you know, Ben's approach is not just the one word image and the invisibles. You could actually use his framework if you're doing other things. So for example, you know, another thing that I do,
Go ahead.
yeah, another thing that I do is like persona especial, the special person interview. And you know, I use the STAR framework for that as well. So basically, I'm digging through my files here, and for some reason I can't find the STAR. So basically you
Oh,
have
go to Ben Slavik's website, benslavik.com, and you'll see the star is part of his like icon on his name.
okay. Yeah, let's see. Oh yeah, okay. So you have different points on the star. You have create, like so create a story, review a story, do writing activities, then read, and then you extend. And in each point on the star, he has certain activities that fall under that category.
Examples of activities that you could do. Absolutely. And I mean, it's not like this is what you have to do. These are, but activities that have worked very well for him and many others.
Here it is. I found the star chart. Here we go.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the star chart and, so I'm showing the create point says card talk. And now that's an activity that you do in the beginning of the year. And a one-word image or an individually created image. So you're creating the content.
Yeah. So you're looking at a poster, I think, that you could place up on your wall in your classroom. And just as you're like spending a little bit of time thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow in your class, you can look at the star charts to help you prepare.
Yeah. And then the next point on the star says review. And that's when you do the retell of the story. And I do a retell and I actually record it like with a video recorder.
Even with the persona especial with the star.
Yeah. Yeah. And then quick quiz. And then you have writing options. So you can do write and discuss. That's another like a technique that comes from TPRS. Then you have reading activities, and I'm seeing a bunch of reading activities here. You can, do a running dictation. You can do Textivate. You could do choral translation. You could do silent reading. And then finally, and we're going to unpack this on future episodes too.
Okay.
And then you have an extension activities, which would be the timed writes, a dictation, or the word chunk team game, which is a game that a lot of us Ben Slavic teachers do on Fridays.
If I may go back to that star for a second.
Okay.
If I may bring up what you had mentioned before about how you've seen teachers use OWIs, one word images, as a kind of like quick activity to do at the beginning of class to hook students in, engage them. It's so powerful when you create these images or create these stories, and then the next day or even days after, right, you go back to them and you bring them up again. And that's where the stuff becomes like stuck in the brain more when you review them again. The language that's involved, and you're reviewing that language that's involved in these stories that you've created. If we're trying to maximize acquisition here, that is very powerful. So don't just let it happen in one day and then forget about it. Like, make sure you bring it back up. You review it. You go back to it. You build on it. You create that character one day, and then you move that character into the beginning of a story the next day, and then try to, create some conflict or such the next day after that. But like, that is the hard part. When I look at this star, that is really the hard part of when we're training ourselves to become real quality deliverers of language, CI teachers. Like, the hard part is being able to create with students the one word images or the stories, or do that card talk or their scripts, to create. Once you get that creation done, you have that content, and then you can then write it out. You have this content, you can do so many different things.
Right.
So that's I've noticed over the years, like, just saying that if we're going to focus on something to really develop our craft on, let's focus on that create piece.
That's true. Yeah. And the thing is, well, I think teachers, we all have the tendency to want to get through things and want to do like a lot of activities, or to keep changing activities, every 15 minutes or every 20 minutes, because we've been told that, whatever the attention span of students, and, so we have to change every 15 minutes. And, I mean, sometimes, yeah, you do need to take like a brain break or something like that, but we're not here to like rush through activities.
Right.
So, obviously this is the method that I've chosen. I've been using it since 2017. It's now 2026. So, like 9 years. And, yeah, I use this method to teach Spanish 1 to students who have no Spanish background or very little. And then I use it also to teach Spanish 3. Those are the main levels that I've taught. Spanish 3 is quite enjoyable because you can do a little bit less translation. You can be a little bit more, use more advanced language. And generally the kids, when they're in junior year in high school, I feel like that's really the best year, because, they're not freshmen and sophomore anymore, but they're also not checked out due to being seniors.
Yeah. It's a good year.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it might be a stressful year for them, but they're more focused, right?
So if we had to okay, so obviously, we love Ben's approach. If we had to list any cons of this approach, what would it be? Like, you have to.
If I had to list.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I
not something I normally think about. I don't normally think about.
Yeah. I mean, because we're trying to be analytical, we're trying to be objective here, play devil's advocate. I think one of them is that the teacher, you need to work on your proficiency in the language you're teaching, right? So when you're creating stories on the fly, non-targeted, you do need to know how to translate the student suggestions into Spanish, like, relatively quickly, right? So
it does help.
It helps. Now, there are times when students come up with suggestions that are just really technical words in English. And, I don't know, like, I can't even think of one right now, but I don't know, like, let's say a really technical word.
Like a specific part of a ship or something.
Yeah, or like a specific part of a car, and you don't know it. Well, I just have Profe Dos, or Professor Dos, who is one of the students who basically becomes your assistant in the story. I have them look that up on their Chromebook, right? Yeah. And I'm not ashamed to say, like, look, guys, like, whatever. I have a master's in Spanish, but I don't know how to say this part of a car, right? No. But that being said, you can't do that all the time. So you really have to have a really good proficiency in the language that you're teaching. I mean, you should have that anyway, even though you're, even if you're not teaching with Ben Slavic's method. But I think that's one of them. And then the other thing is maybe classroom management, is that you cannot rush into the storytelling in Ben Slavic's method without practicing first his recommendations on classroom management, right? Because
you have to have it's a part of learning this practice, this methed.
Because it's a radically different way of doing instruction. And sometimes students see this as like, oh, we're not doing anything. We're just sitting around creating a character, but we're not doing anything. Right. So you do have to do a lot of like front loading of explaining the process, explaining classroom management procedures. Whereas if you go with some kind of pre-made CI curriculum, maybe it looks enough like the textbook where students are more just like, okay, I got to fill out this worksheet, or I got to do this tech activity, and that's it.
Yeah. A big part of combating that, we're not really doing anything here, is just setting purpose at the beginning of class. I mean, you feel this out as a teacher working with your students, how much you need to do this, how much you need to review, go over classroom objectives, the purpose behind what we're doing. And I think, I don't know, by doing that, I've always gotten through that hump. I've always gotten through to those students. I've never really had a long lasting issue with a student complain about the quality of the instruction that's happening and using this methodology. And also going back to what were you talking about? Oh, knowing your target language well. There's ways around it too, right? I mean, I didn't start off as a Spanish teacher. I started off as an English teacher. Yes, I majored in Spanish and at the university. I got a major in Spanish along with the major in English and history. But I definitely wasn't fluent graduating from college. I definitely wasn't fluent when I started teaching Spanish. And that is the case for a lot of Spanish teachers, not super fluent. But that's okay. That's okay, because you find the words that work. And if it's that one part of the car that you can't identify or whatever, then you get something close to it, like motor, right? I mean, just use motor, right? Or find something else close to it. And I don't know. I also, having experienced, that kind of situation where I'm thinking of, oh my God, what is the word for this thing? And students, when you do it in a way that's lighthearted, and when you do it with a sense of showing that you too are also a vulnerable human being that has weaknesses as well as strengths. When you're being open and heart-centered with students in that regard, I think those are some moments where you really can develop strong relationships with them. And you're asking students to maybe look up a word, great, right? I usually just use a hard copy of a dictionary because I don't like students going on computers too much. Or I just think of a different word and I explain to kids this I know this word is kind of like that word, So there you go.
That's true.
Don't let it.
I mean, it's all how you approach it too, It's all, you just have to have confidence in yourself in the process, and you have to show that confidence to students,
Yeah.
And, sometimes I've had some students oh, well, why don't you know this? I'm I'm sorry. It's been a while since I lived in a Spanish speaking country. And when I go to take my car in for, fixing my car, he speaks English. So, just give me a break, And, yeah. So, well, let's move down the list here. Next, we have story listening, which was invented by Dr. Beniko Mason, who is an English professor in Japan. She's published studies on it. And basically what it is that it's exactly what the name of the method is. It's listening to stories. So
kindergarten story times. Everybody sit on the mat.
Yeah.
So a lot of picture book.
That's right. So she mainly teaches college level English students in Japan, community college level. And what she does is she takes classic fairy tale stories. So these are some of these stories are common to a lot of different cultures. And so she has what's called a prompter, which is basically a story script with some of the key vocabulary. And then as she's drawing pictures on the board, so stick figure type things, she tells the story. So this method is unique because during the story, there are no checks for understanding whatsoever. The students have to listen to the story. And then, sometimes as a follow-up activity, she gives the students have to, maybe summarize the story in their L1. But it's really just listening to stories. And I mean, these stories could go for maybe 15 to 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes, and yeah, I've seen it in action.
You've seen videos.
I've seen it I've seen videos, but also I attended the story listening conference that I helped organize.
Oh yeah. And you thought
Um,
that okay, cool.
so the benefit of it, well, number one, this is what Krashen is like, he's advocating right now. He's no longer on the TPRS train. He's like, let's go with story listening. So he 100% supports this.
Sure. I see.
So I will tell you that my experience is such that I don't think that it is a good method for complete beginners. I think it's a good method to do in maybe like Spanish 3, starting in like Spanish 3. Because, okay, so when I went to the story listening conference and they did this method in Italian, I was like, oh, wow, this is great. I understand everything. Well, that's because I speak Spanish. And at some point, like years ago, I was actively trying to learn Italian. So, you know, I kind of have the basics down. And then when there was a demo done in French, I also got a lot of what was going on. But guess what? Somebody did, and I don't remember if it was Japanese or Chinese or another Asian language. They did a demo. I got nothing out of it. I did not understand one word.
Oh no.
So the thing is that I don't believe that, at least I don't believe that this method would work for me as a standalone method. But I can definitely see, so I guess their theory here is that like the targeting of TPRS doesn't allow the input to be rich enough. And then the checks for understanding kind of break the flow of the language.
Yes.
Which, and that's one thing that I did see, like using Ben's method with Spanish 3, like second semester. I can see how students could become over-reliant on translation.
Okay.
But where they're to a point where they don't really need as much translation as they just can figure out things from context.
Well, yeah. I mean, you try to provide lots of visual support, you provide gestures. You know, that's a big goal for ours throughout the year, is to try to reduce the amount of translations or pauses in the flow of language throughout the year as much as possible, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the pros of it is, now I just bought Benico Mason's new book, What If Input Alone is Sufficient? And, you know, she does have data to back up her theories. So I'm not going to.
You attended one session, right? I don't know how long was it when you were listening to.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe like, I'm just thinking about the subconscious process and how we know it's a mystery how it works, right? Maybe if you went back day after day after day, right? Maybe like actually, boom, it might hit you later on, and you might have seen that you've acquired this language. But yeah, I don't know. That's cool that you were able to attend some examples of this. It's great. Like you have some firsthand knowledge of this, and I see the power in it for sure. I imagine that Benico, Dr. Mason, she is drawing on the board. You said stick figures, right? And I imagine she's using a lot of the different ways in which we make sure that what we say is comprehensible as she's telling the stories.
Yeah.
So there's a technique there. There's definitely a technique there.
Yeah.
I think about comparing it to reading a story to like my little kids at the ages of 3, 4, 5, 6, like reading those story books, picture books. And you already have all the pictures there in the books. And oftentimes the language is brief. There's a couple sentences per page, and you have a lot of images to look at. And, you know, I think about what words, what language are my kids like really understanding when they're listening to me read this, but they're probably hearing these words for the first time, but they see the images there. So they're like kind of understanding the story, and they understand a number of words and perhaps not all. And it's also amazing how how the little kids follow you. They continue, at least when I'm reading my stories to my own kids, right? They continue to listen to you and listen to the story and are enthralled in the story, even though they don't understand like a lot of these words.
Yeah,
And I think you
true.
think about how I as adults too, I'm pretty sure we can tap into that ability. We just really have to like be open to it.
Yeah. Yeah, so maybe this is something to research a little bit more. One part of it that kind of turns me off is the drawing on the board. I'm just not very good at drawing, and I had a teacher that recommended to me that I get I think it's Ed Emberley has books like about how to draw and how to draw stick figures and stuff, and
Okay.
the books are really good, but it just got shelved and I got busy with other things. So
Yeah.
what I currently do is I do story listening second semester, and what I'll do is I'll create an invisible story with one class, and then I'll tell it via story listening to another class. And what I'll do is I'll just tell them that okay, no notes, right? No, do not take any notes, but just listen to the story. And after the story, I'm going to give you 3 minutes and you're just going to write down in English everything that you understood about the story. Right. So it feels like there's accountability then, because it's like, oh, is he going to collect my summary, or you know what I mean?
Okay.
So basically, from what I understand from Benico, that anything you ask them to do is really just, forcing them to pay attention during the story. It's not about the activity, you know. So yeah, story listening. Check it out. Benico Mason, Dr. Benico Mason. Yeah. So the next one I have on the list is Dr. Bill Van Patten's task-based learning. So if you've listened to Tea with BVP, you'll know that he's big on tasks. Now, and I don't know if this is because, of his background with the textbook companies or, teaching at the university level, but he likes creating tasks. And
Okay.
so basically
his like definition of task, it might be needed to be sort of spelled out here.
yeah, let's see. Well, let's ask let's see.
I attended a CI reboot conference a couple years ago, and I remember listening to Bill Van Patten's session, and I took some screenshots of his slideshow, and one of them was about this idea of task based.
Here it is. Okay, according to Dr. Bill Van Patten, a task is essentially a communicative event with a purpose and an outcome that is not linguistic.
Okay.
The crucial point is the goal cannot be to practice the language itself. Students use language to accomplish something else. And this follows definition of communication as the expression, interpretation, and sometimes negotiation of meaning in a given context for a purpose. So,
right. Okay, that makes sense. And you found that quickly. Nice job, Greg.
Yeah, I'm just I'm an expert researcher here. Yeah, so one example that he gives is and this actually ties into my con of this kind of thing.
Okay.
So he gives this example, like, okay, let's say you're a university professor and you have to teach reflexive verbs. So what he says is, like, let's say you have say acuesta and say levanta. So goes to bed and gets up.
Yeah.
So instead of teaching that or have students practice dialogues, what he'll do is he'll say, okay, everybody write down, what time you get up and what time you go to bed. A qué hora te acuestas, a qué hora te levantas. And then he gets the data from the whole class and they make a chart and they see, okay, what time does this person get up? Who stays up the latest? Right. And he's doing all this in the target language.
Okay.
Then they take that data and they compare it to the national average for the age group of the students that are responding.
Okay.
So in other words, the language is the vehicle for the task, but it's not the main goal.
So the
Okay.
main goal in this activity that Bill Van Patten does with his students is to compare the sleeping habits of his students to those like to the national norm.
Yeah, the national average.
Okay.
So it's kind of a cool approach.
Yeah.
You know, and I could definitely see how like something like persona especial is kind of like this task-based learning, because in the special person interview, you interview a student and you're basically, your goal is to get to know them as a class.
Uh-huh.
And the language is the vehicle for doing that. Now, my problem with this is that, you know, this approach, like, again, I don't think this is something I could use as a standalone approach, because I've never heard an example like Dr. Bill Van Patten. Every time he explains this task-based learning, he gives that example of the a qué hora se levanta, a qué hora se acuesta. He doesn't give other examples. So I don't know what are some other examples. And then the other thing that I was thinking is like, I mean, I do like how like the practicing the language is not the main purpose, but at the same time, there is kind of a hidden agenda there, right? Because like if I'm in a college class at, you know, 10 a.m. on a Wednesday morning, like why would I be interested in why would I be interested in what time you go to bed and what time
Yeah,
you get up?
boy.
Like right. Like so it is
I don't know if I would call it an approach either necessarily, right? It's more of an activity.
more of an activity, yeah.
And I mean, ultimately, what we're really trying to do is find a way to engage students in to communicate with students, right? And Bill Van Patten does distinguish between the goal of like using language versus communicating, and we're trying to really focus on communicating with this idea that we are trying to engage students on something that's interesting, right? So
Right.
I understand that, like, okay, maybe if we look at it, compare our sleeping habits, that could be interesting. But yeah, I mean, whatever you can think of as a teacher to talk about with your students that you think your students would be interested in talking about, go for it. I remember Robert, the German teacher in California, retired recently.
Is it
Oh,
Robert Harrell?
yes, Harrell. Yes, Robert Harrell. He had a whole like German program at his school, right? So I think he was teaching German 1, 2, 3, and 4. I think at the upper levels, he did this activity where students would choose a soccer team in Germany, and on Monday, after a weekend of games in the German league, that each student would like present what happened to their soccer team. So that, I mean, that's another way.
That's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea.
As long as it's meaningful, right? And I'm sure Mr. Harrell didn't have it be where like the student was like in front of the class having a formal slideshow, Google slideshow presentation, not necessarily anything like that, right? It was more of like a conversation that he would get students to get involved in about the soccer league in Germany. Yeah.
I mean, one good thing about this Bill Van Patten task-based, method or approach or activity, whatever you want to call it, is it does give you an option if you're in a situation where you are mandated to teach with the textbook. Because I just actually finished a master's program through Idaho State University in Spanish, and thanks.
And when you have kids,
yeah, oh yeah, that was. It was brutal, not because of Idaho State, but because of the situation. Yeah. And so anyway, one of my professors, she invited a recent graduate of the program who is working as a college professor at the community college level, because, I guess you only need a master's. You don't need a doctorate to teach at the community college level. And so this particular teacher, she was not certified to teach high school, right? So she wasn't like me, like basically like I'm already a teacher and I'm just getting a master's,
Sure.
right? As the next step in my career. She was actually had no teaching background, got the master's, and now she's qualified only to teach community college. So she's kind of limited to the community college scene. And she said that it is 100% where I think she was teaching in like North Carolina. She said it's 100% you must teach with the textbook, and all the professors in the department have to teach with the textbook, and they have common assessments and all that kind of stuff. So she cannot really do anything creative outside the textbook. But I can see how something like this Dr. Bill Van Patten approach could give somebody some options for some CI activities to do within that kind of a framework. But it's not ideal, I would say. It's not ideal.
Well, no, I mean, if it would be a great activity to include in like a month or a month-long cycle, maybe, right? If you have students that are willing to take the extra step to like engage in these like little mini surveys with each other. So yeah, but we're working with general public student body population in the public high schools, or so.
Yeah. I mean, going back to Ben's approach, a lot of people think that, oh, this is just drawings, and this is like, it's kind of childish, right? Okay. So since the pandemic, okay, I have been teaching using Ben's approach online. Okay.
Yeah.
And so I taught a guy who he's from the East Coast. He moved to Puerto Rico because of his job. And he's an engineer, right? So we did Ben Slavic's approach online. And maybe I can do another episode. We can do another episode on how to teach online using Ben's method. But we would do the invisible stories. And guess what? All of his stories usually had something to do with engineering, right? Because obviously that's what he's interested in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, the character would be like, I don't know, in the factory where he's an engineer and he would be fixing a machine, and and then like actually these technical terms would come up that he needs for his job. They would come up within the invisible story, but it's like, yeah, you had like a personified water bottle named, Bobby the Bottle or something, working in the factory. Right. But like, so the story was like humorous and it seemed like childish, but within that story, he had all the technical vocabulary he needed, and he had all of the frequent structures in the language because it's non-targeted and the frequent structures are already there, and he loved it. And so I had him. I had another client. He was actually the manager of a vitamin factory in California.
Okay.
And again, a lot of his characters were like vitamins and, and all that kind of stuff. And, I have a longtime client who's a Catholic priest, and he was in Chicago. They sent him to Montana, and he's currently on a Indian reservation there.
Oh, no.
With the Crow people, and very interesting. But he wants to keep up his Spanish, so we do a once a week, and he's an adult, he's in his 40s, and we just have a great time using Ben's method, and the vocabulary that comes up is the stuff that he needs. So
yeah. And that makes me think about this task-based learning too. My understanding of that is really about giving students a simulation of a real life application of where do students see themselves using the language or needing the language, in what context. That's more my understanding. So what you're doing is like pretty imagine. like or the pure priests, you know, where
Yeah.
they're going to do language. I was doing a little bit of research recently because I'm going to be teaching strictly Spanish heritage level classes next year at my new school.
Yeah. Wow.
And there's a site called We Teach Languages, and where I just dabbled into it, like starting a couple days ago. And there's one interview of like somebody who runs the foreign language program at UC Irvine, I believe. Julio Torres was his name, and he talked about task-based learning in this sense as we're describing it.
Yeah. It's just the invisibles, it's all there with the invisibles, the things that you need. But that's the thing is, though, really, for most people, I mean, if we're really honest with ourselves, does anybody, I mean, yes, I believe that everybody should learn Spanish or learn a second language, right? Like if I hadn't learned Spanish, there's people that I would never have never been friends with, including my wife, right? My kids might not exist right now if I didn't learn Spanish, because my wife's family is primarily Spanish speaking. I don't really know if the family dynamic would be the same if I was just sitting at family gatherings in silence,
Oh my God.
Yeah. So, but when it comes down to it, is like, you don't have to learn a language. Like, I mean, there's a lot of monolingual people in the world that are extremely successful. I mean, it's not, like, you
Especially
don't,
Americans speaking English, sure.
yeah, and especially Americans speaking English, or if you speak another like world language, like Chinese or Russian or Arabic, right? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can survive without ever learning another language. But so that's the thing is that like when we have this thing, we tell, oh, you need to learn Spanish, and we're gonna practice going through customs, because when you go through customs in Madrid, well, guess what? The customs guys usually speak English,
Yeah.
It's really funny. I used to tutor this student who he was in a like heavy grammar class at the University of Illinois, Chicago at UIC. And his professor was just cramming in all this grammar, traditional grammar tests. So I'm just trying to get him to pass,
Okay.
And I remember that one thing on the list was nosotros commands. Okay. And it wasn't clear whether nosotros commands was going to be on the list or not, like for what he needed to know for the test.
Okay.
So I told him, look, can you clarify with the professor if you really need to, like, if this is going to be on the test and if you need to know this. So he did that. And then the professor was like, well, of course you need to know nosotros commands. What are you going to do when you're in Madrid and you're with your friends and you want to say, like, let's go to the next place? It's like, I mean, it's like, if you're with your friends in Madrid and you're an American, they probably speak English. And then the other thing is, like, why not just say, vamos al Parque Retiro,
Oh my God. Yeah, quick. Yeah, I remember I spent a whole like 10 months in Madrid studying abroad my senior year at University of Wisconsin, right? Studying at University of Complutense, right? And
Oh, wow.
and I struggled. I felt like I didn't learn enough Spanish I didn't engage enough with Spanish speakers. I didn't really learn enough, and I felt very self-conscious about that. I remember in the airport in Madrid on the way back home to Chicago, I remember listening to like this business dude who was like a blonde from like the Netherlands or something, and his like broken Spanish and how he'd be like, vamos a contar dinero. I don't know. He was like speaking in such basic language, but he got it out of his mouth, right? I mean, and it was very charming, but he was being understood. He was having a conversation with whoever he was talking about. I'm like, oh my God, that was a big moment for me. Like, forget about just try, Anyways,
Yeah.
hey, Oleg, we have 2 more items on our list to try to capture today.
Yeah, we have to get through these because we want to move on in our series here. So, teaching with novels. So, as TPRS books, Fluency Matters, all these companies, they put out a lot of novels that are graded readers. So they are novel length, like 100, 150 pages, but they're made for, they're made for people who are learning Spanish or learning French. And usually they narrow them down to like, they might say like 100 unique words or 50 unique words. And yeah, so some of the most famous ones: Pobre Ana by Blaine Ray, Brandon Brown, Quiere un Perro by Carol Gobb, El Nuevo Houdini by Carol Gobb. Those are probably the most famous ones, the Blaine Ray novels and the Carol Gobb novels. So basically, now there's two ways that I see that people teach novels. The first way used to be like taking the vocabulary from a chapter and taking those structures out and then doing a TPRS story based on that chapter and then reading that chapter. I don't really know the many people that do that anymore. I mean, I remember Ben Slavic had a book called Houdini Scripts, where it's like every script was based on a chapter of El Nuevo Houdini by Carol Gobb. Now, I don't really know anybody that
he published something like this. I didn't realize.
Yeah, I think so.
Green Scripts.
Yeah.
Interesting.
If you
a long time ago.
Yeah, if you ask him about it, he'd probably say it's trash and don't read it. But the truth is, it's probably pretty good. But yeah, I have it somewhere buried in my hard drive. But yeah, and I don't really know anybody that teaches like that. The other way is just to read the novel as a class, do extension activities, do activities to, like that tie in culture. And then just, there's different ways you can do it, like
read and discuss
and
way.
So I don't know, I'm not a huge fan, although I do one novel per semester in all classes that I teach. The reason why I do it is taking a break from the storytelling.
Sure. To do it after a full semester with level 1, I think you could do it with like a Brandon Brown. What is it?
So like in
Brandon
December.
Dog. Yeah. I think you could. Absolutely. But you got to be careful. We got to be careful. We don't hit students with these novels in that first year. I mean, if you're really doing a quality input-based instruction like Greg is doing, at the end of the first semester, yes, definitely. Otherwise, I would really recommend waiting until the end of the year.
Yeah. I mean, Ben Slavic points out that one big problem with these novels is, it says level 3 novel, but it's really too hard for level 3.
Oh, sure.
It says a level 2 novel, but it's really too hard for level 2. So what I've had success in doing is I've taught the book Semi Professional by Adam Geed. And he's kind of a lesser known CI author, but he's kind of moving and shaking with a bunch of projects.
He writes the soccer books.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, but he has 2 books called Semi Professional, and it's a Spanish 1 book, but I do it in Spanish 3. And what I like about it is it doesn't require a ton of translation because the students understand it. So that's really the thing, is that if you're going to teach with novels, ignore the level that it says it is, and teach a Spanish 1 book in level 3 and teach a Spanish 2 book in level 4, and don't really teach any novel in Spanish 1 and 2. I would say
one book that comes to mind, and we could spend a whole episode. We could spend a whole year talking about novels, but maybe we could spend one episode just talking about novels that we've seen have worked well. That you can have students just really pick up after you give them a lot of the classroom instruction. One that really stands out to me is this by Ben Leves. He's not a well-known author, and I think he's only made 1 or 2 books, perhaps. No, he's made a couple. He wrote about Santana, right? But there's one about, it's called Identidad or Identity or something, where like this nerd turns into a big hulking, gorgeous man. Like,
what's the name? Ben
style. something like identidad or identity, something I forget, but it's a good one. Like it's funny, you know, and like Mike Pito, Super Burguesas. Now, I have a very acute sense of humor. When my sense of humor is very immature. Okay, I'm sorry. And yeah, so I like toilet humor. And Super Burguesas by Mike Pito is definitely funny in that regard.
You know what? You know what? No offense to Mike Pito, but I just Super Burguesas for me is it's just too crazy. Now the first chapter is pretty good with the where he, you know, goes to the bathroom and doesn't wash his hands, and then he lets people see that he doesn't wash his hands, and that's how he gets rid of customers so he can study. But the 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 final chapters of the book, I'm sorry, it's too crazy. You know, I used to teach it as a Spanish 3 novel, but it
Oh, you
just,
did?
yeah, I use it for silent reading now. It's
Sure.
it's just too out there for me.
I haven't used books as whole group study ever. Like I can't even remember when. It's always been silent reading or small group like literature
Yeah.
circles.
Yeah, I feel like I feel like unfortunately the novels have kind of taken over CI teaching, and it really just teachers are plowing through novels and they don't know that the students actually understand them, you know.
Yeah.
And it kind of the novels kind of teach to like really like the top 10% of the class, and then all the other kids are kind of just trailing behind, I feel sometimes.
Yeah.
So I think sustained silent reading, free voluntary reading, or free choice reading, whatever you call it, is the way to go for reading.
That's the way
Maybe,
it goes.
yeah, maybe teach a novel just to take a break, but don't think that novel teaching is like really the best thing for, at least for levels 1, 2, and 3. Now, when you get up to the upper levels, sure, we got to start diving into books, you know.
Cool. Well,
All
I think we're
right.
running out of time, man. Can we cover this last topic here we wanted to cover?
Well, yeah, we don't have an absolute time limit here, but organic world language. So if you're around the teaching world for a while, the language teaching world, you're going to see organic world language. They have a lot of videos on YouTube, and they have a boot camp which will introduce you to their method. I helped them come to Chicago back in, it was right before the pandemic. Okay. They do a week-long boot camp. It's very intense, very intense. I was just exhausted. Um, so basically what it is, it's a 100% full immersion method. They advocate for a lot of comprehensible input. They also advocate for comprehensible output, which was a theory by Meryl Swain, that you have to output to see gaps in your language, and then it, like, you know, then you could fill those gaps.
She calls it comprehensible output. Okay, that's funny.
Comprehensible output. Yeah, Krashen has basically refuted her. But anyway, it is a method. So basically what they do is they have no desks and no chairs.
Yeah.
The lesson starts out in a circle. Okay, and they have really cool, actually, La Maestra Loca, Annabelle, I forgot her last name.
Yes.
Anyway, she calls herself La Maestra Loca. She's been to a few of their seminars, and some of her brain breaks and stuff actually come from them. So basically, you get into a circle, and what is cool is that they have different like things, like they say like hand to hand, foot to foot, and then that's a way to get like a, you know, like the kids in a good circle. And then they'll do like, basically they'll do like PQA, which is a TPRS term for personalized questions and answers, and they'll get like the students warmed up, and they'll do activities, and then they basically have students change spots in the circle by, they'll tell them like, okay, cross the circle like an elephant. Well, and obviously this is all done in the target language, you know, cross the circle slowly, or, you know, so there's like TPR built in there too.
Okay.
But basically what they'll do is that they'll look for a hook. what they call a hook. So like, let's say, there's a class and some student, I don't know, maybe they have a Nirvana t-shirt, and they'll start doing like personalized questions and answers based on that student. And then they'll do like kind of like a TPRS story, but without no English translation, and with a lot of TPR, and they'll basically create a story. And then they'll break the kids up into smaller groups, and they'll have them do like tasks like retell the story to each other, and so everything is based on the circle. And then when they get into literacy, they do a lot of stuff like on poster paper, like Venn diagrams and stuff like that. The thing is that the students are not allowed to speak in English. And the teachers are not allowed to speak in English. Now, they do have like one day a week where they have like an English day, to kind of give the kids a break. But they also do a lot of team building activities. So I know somebody that worked for a company named Gear Up in Chicago. It's a program that's in Chicago public schools. Okay. And it's like an after school program to help kids with like, academic preparedness, staying in school, stuff like that. Wow. And that organization does a lot of team building activities. The organic world language is big on team building activities. Okay. And it's all in the target language. Now, my impression of it is similar to my impression of story listening. When I went to demos, because they also had us like running circles. They call it like running a circle. When I went to a French session, just because I've been to like a lot of, CI French, demos, like I learned a little French.
Well, you've been to a lot of PD in general, Greg. I mean, you are very well resourced.
Yeah, too much. No, yeah, it was actually
sharing your knowledge is a wonderful thing.
Yeah. But when I was, for example, in a demo with a Romance language, I was fine. It was like, oh man, this is great. One of the presenters, they did a demo in an indigenous language. I want to say it was Peru. Was it Peru?
Like Inca?
It wasn't Quechua. It was some other like very, very obscure language. Okay.
And this was an organic world language exercise, right?
Organic world language, right? So they were doing like a lot of TPR and stuff. And so anyway, I was in this circle, right? For this circle activity, and they were teaching this language, and I got to the point where I was totally lost. I had no idea what I was doing, and I actually like internally started panicking, right? Because we're language teachers, so we want to get this, we want to do this properly, and I just started copying things that everybody else was doing. So I was basically like feigning understanding. Yeah. But then the teacher would like call on me, and I would be like totally clueless. So then she would like help me, but then I was like, but I don't understand what you just helped me out of. And then I went to her after the circle, and I was like, hey, what did these two words mean? And she said, I can't tell you that. That's part of our method.
Oh, no.
And I can't tell you that.
It's a secret.
And yeah, and so they have this idea of like struggle, like you have to push through it and you have to struggle. Yeah. But the thing is that, I mean, I'm a language teacher, and I was actually like frustrated. Yeah. It was extremely frustrating, and I couldn't imagine being a high school student and not even just taking the language because I need to get 2 years in and going through that experience. I really think that they have a good thing going, but sure. I think that they need to embrace L2 to L1 translation on a whiteboard. I mean, that's okay if they don't want to say it like, use English vocally. Yeah. But I think with that little translation from target language to English, I would have been back on track and I would have been able to enjoy that.
The
activity.
cognitive load is big.
Yeah.
When you're reviewing the language that you're familiar with, but haven't acquired yet. Right? I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
you got to give us a break, give the students a break. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But
So
what you're describing makes me think of like elementary schools, like 30-minute classes, like little kids,
now I was going to try to incorporate some of their stuff into my instruction, but then the pandemic came and see a lot of their activities are like team building, like
Yes.
holding hands and stuff like that. And we couldn't do any of that.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, I'm going to stick with Ben Slavic, but I would totally recommend that you go to their, somebody go to their boot camp. If you're already a proficient CI teacher,
Okay.
and you want to learn like team building activities, brain breaks, and maybe you want to see like what an environment, like a total immersion environment would look like. I feel like too that the teachers that were like, because there were some teachers that were like traditional teachers and they went to this seminar and they were like really into it, and they had never heard of TPRS or Ben Slavic or any of this stuff.
They haven't experienced the other good things that are going on.
So I feel like that they were into it just because it's better than the textbook,
Right. I'm wondering if there's things I could pick up there to use for team building, because I've noticed teaching Spanish heritage classes, there's a big need to help students feel comfortable with each other.
Yeah.
Using language, and we're trying to get the heritage level classes to use the language a lot more.
Yeah, that actually, organic world language might be a good
Something to dabble
option for you. Yeah. I mean, we're not, Darcy Rogers, she's the creator, we love you, Darcy. Okay. So, we're not trying to knock anybody's method here, but, this podcast is just regular teachers telling their impression of these different methods. So, I'm sure that there's classrooms where this totally works, and maybe we're off base. Maybe 100% target language works, but for me, it doesn't work, So
sounds like there's a lot of brain break type of great stuff to do.
Yeah.
Stuff. Yeah. In there.
Wow. Well, this has been really good. Just going through these methods and talking about them, just our impressions. And, and if you are new to CI, just beware. I didn't know that being a Spanish teacher could be so controversial, is like everybody's a lot of infighting about this kind of stuff. Not as much as there used to be, but a lot of infighting about targeted, non-targeted, immersion, not immersion. When do you read all that stuff? But you know what? It's all coming from a good place, because we all want to do what's best for our students.
There's a lot of people out there, a lot of teachers out there that are incorporating this stuff. They're listening and trying it out bit by bit. Start small, and they're really enjoying what they're doing. And so there's some as well. And people like to engage in discussion and debates, and that's great too, as long as we're, properly giving credit where credit's due and doing our best, to appreciate what's come before us and appreciate the struggles that teachers go through, and trying to, especially in the field of foreign language, where like it's been a history of like not really reaching students. So yeah, it's great to talk with you, Greg, again. Looking forward to next time.
Yep. And we're starting to hear the music. So like, subscribe, and follow. We are available on all major podcast streaming platforms. Please give us a review, send a link to your friends, post on Facebook, post on Twitter, or whatever it's called these days. And we'll see you next time.
So
bye-bye.
This has been the CI Renaissance Podcast with Sean Lawler and Greg Schwab, bringing the enthusiasm back to CI instruction. If you have a question, an idea for a future episode, or just want to connect with us, visit us at thecirenaissance.com, or email us at thecirenaissance@gmail.com. See you next time. And remember, let the Renaissance begin.